Welcome back to the Seven Figure Music School podcast. In last week's episode, we interviewed Jeff Homer, really unique guy, unique in the fact that he owns 41 music schools. And we wanted to invite him back on the podcast to tell us how he manages those 41 music schools, and tell us he did, because in last week's episode, he detailed how he has hired 34 general managers to be his boots on the ground in his schools that are all around the United States. That interview was so good that it went on for a very, very long time, and so we made the decision to cut that episode in half. So last week's episode talked about what is a general manager and what makes a good one, and what they do, the day-to-day operational things that they do to run those schools. And in today's episode, we're talking to Jeff about how he finds, recruits, hires, and retains great general managers. We even get into the details of compensation and benefits. Really practical information. Practical because if you, as a music school owner, want to share the burden of ownership with a trusted team member, you have a lot to learn from Jeff. Like I said, this represents the second half of the interview that we began last week, so we're going to actually jump in midstream. So here we go. Maybe it's time to get into recruitment and retaining a good GM. What do you think, Nate?
Sure.
Yeah, I love the retention piece on this because you've already touched on it around profit sharing, which is super interesting to me, so I'd like to hear about that. I'm curious on the recruitment tip, if you have any more to share on that, because you talked about the two buckets where you draw from. You didn't use buckets, but I use buckets.
Yes.
So the two areas that we draw from, which I totally appreciated. But I'm curious how often you look beyond, say, the geographic area, or are there any other tips on finding those people from one of those two areas that you'd like to share?
Yeah, look, this goes back to our belief that in our system, and we have to be thoughtful about what other systems might look like and whether this is the same or different. But in our system, what we're looking for, we don't think are unusual or rare skills.
Right.
And so there should never be a case where we have to pay somebody to move across the country to take a GM job, because there should be somebody there local that's a lot better fit and just kind of lower risk.
Right.
I think, like I said, the maybe half or more of our schools came with a general manager that was doing the general manager job before we took over. And then of the remainder, maybe 2/3, we hired, a member of the existing staff into that role, usually a teacher, but sometimes just a kind of rank and file administrator. And sometimes we hired somebody, from outside the business, to come in and to lead that. I think in terms of, you hire for this role the same way you do for a front desk role, you just have a higher standard, right? You're looking for someone who's personable, who's going to be a great ambassador for what you're trying to communicate to everybody. Again, everybody that walks through the door. What do we want to communicate? This is a fun place where we teach high quality music lessons, and we have professional staff that are here to assist you with whatever your goals may be, from fun beginning to pre-professional and beyond. So someone that can credibly communicate that to students, parents, and teachers. So that's, there's a lot of soft skills, right? There's a lot of behavioral interview questions and that kind of stuff. And then, do you have administrative experience? Do you have scheduling experience? Do you have phone experience? Do you have, generic customer service experience, or scheduling experience, if you get the thing I mentioned. So, folks that are coming from, medical office,
right.
Classroom teaching, lots of backgrounds have been successful and I think a lot of them a lot of candidates really love the idea they're going to work in a music school. I think that's a fun environment. And so I think we compete really competitively for talent because it's perceived to be a positive place to come to work. I think that's cool. I think it's really fun to spend my time at a music school. I think it's a great place to hang out. And so I think we do well at attracting folks that are going to have the skills, but are just going to be dynamic, leaders of the community. And that's kind of what we're screening for.
Do your GMs skew younger? Are they older? Is there a mix across the board? I'm curious. I know that's a little more of a specific question, but
I'm pretty curious. I'm pretty sure our youngest general manager is 24 or 25, so very young and doing really well.
I love that.
In that role. And we have a couple of general managers in the late 60s.
Wow.
So, full gamut. And yeah, different challenges, right? One end of that spectrum, learning how to be a leader, be a boss,
Yes.
Manage people, but like really energetic, very tech savvy, very social media savvy, lots of pros and cons there. The converse is also true, right? Lots of experience, managing people, working, being a member of the workforce, but having to manage across generations and to deal with, folks with different work expectations and, make technological, build new technology skills and that kind of stuff. So, it's a mix. And I think one of the things that I did not anticipate at all when we embarked on this journey was how valuable the community of general managers that we have would be to each other. Because they have such diverse backgrounds and skill sets, they're able to get together and be like, hey, I'm an expert on this. Let me help you with that. And so, we don't have, to give the easiest example, we don't have 30 people making a Happy Labor Day graphic. We have one awesome graphic designer making it, and we all rip it off, right? And we all send it out to our schools on social media, that kind of stuff. And so, from the software tools that we use to the day-to-day challenges of being a customer service person, there's folks that are always raising their hand to say, hey, if you have this challenge, come to me. I'd love to take your call. I'd love to help you with this. And I didn't plan for that or even really encourage it in any formal way. It just happened really organically that we just put our GMs in touch with each other and we said, have fun. You guys are all peers. And I think back to your question about retention, this is one of two superpowers for Ensemble as it relates to GM retention. One is this community, right? So previously, being a general manager can be a lonely job, right? You're the kind of you're on the brunt of a lot of negative feedback, from time to time. There's nobody really to vent that to, and you don't have a peer in that role because it's kind of specialized kind of thing. So imagine instead being catapulted into a situation where you have 34 really awesome, really experienced, really caring peers that are willing to hear you out, to help you with your problem, to give you advice in your situation. I think that's been really positive. Not just to avoid teasing it, that the second superpower I was going to point to is we can offer career progression beyond general manager. That's probably not available in a lot of places, but we have a need for regional managers, for shared services staff, where we can say with a straight face, hey, if you do a good job in this role, there's something beyond it, and it's not just you're going to run this school on the front desk forever, and then you're going to have to move on to a new challenge when you're ready for something new. Within Ensemble, we can offer that career progression, and I think that has been really exciting and motivating to a subset of folks for whom that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Can I circle back on your soft skills comment?
Sure.
Because I want to look at interviewing. Because I want to be sure our listeners leave with some very specific upgrades that they might add.
Let me tell you my three favorite interview questions for administrators.
There you go, dude. Lay it on us.
Okay. Number one, imagine that you are a parent of a student who's looking for music lessons. What do we have to do to be attractive to you? Some version of that, right? Put yourself. Can you empathize with the parent? Can you understand what they're looking for in a music school? And come up with a good answer about imagining what the parent's looking for, how we can A, have it, and B, communicate that we have it, or show or demonstrate that we are the right fit. Question number two, as much as our students, pay the bills around here, I think our teachers, are also our clients, right? They have a lot of options in terms of where they spend their time. Their skills are in demand. They could teach anywhere, including out of their living rooms. Why do you think a teacher comes to teach in a music school? And how do we make their experience here as good as we can? And, do they understand that a lot of the value to the teacher of the music school environment is this job, the one that they are the benefit to the teacher of taking on that administrative load and sheltering them from having to collect money and enforce policies and, find students and all this kind of stuff. And that is the service that we're ultimately providing to our teachers. And that's why we get a share of the revenue, right? That's why we get a share of what we charge the students, is because we're providing these services to the teachers in exchange for that. So, those sorts of do you understand ultimately what I'm driving at with both of those questions is, do you understand the people you're going to be responsible for serving, right? Do you understand what their needs are, and can you empathize with them, and can you tell me how you're going to be successful at serving them? Even in cases where, they may not understand, how the teacher feels, especially if they're not coming from a teaching background or from a music background, are they at least giving, answers about, well, I assume that they want to show up to a place that's, that's well run, where the schedule, communication is clear and expectations are clear, and this, the environment is conducive to having, a fun and positive experience. And that's a fine answer. You don't have to get too deep into their mind, but can you successfully put yourself in the shoes of the people you're going to be serving, and understand what their needs are and how you might, start to address them?
How do you, real story here at BMF, because we're always just trying to keep it, like you said, we don't want to talk in hypotheticals. We only want to talk about what's actually happening on the ground. We have a wonderful, wonderful camp manager who has built incredible trust and camaraderie amongst all the teachers. Just absolutely feel supported, yet also struggles with those high-impact parents. So has difficulty facing that piece of the communication piece, but is great with the teacher communication piece. And we all know that actually communicating with teachers is also high impact, right? It's not easy to be communicating consistently with teachers. I'm curious, this gets me to my next series of questions, Jeff, on really coaching GMs and retaining great ones. I think I know a little bit about how you structure things, but you said we're on the phone almost every day with our GMs. Tell me what is the support system? Mm-hmm. How do they get onboarded? What's the training like in the first, say, 1 month? And then what's the ongoing support system for them? And I'm thinking less in terms of how do they get what they need? Like, I need graphics for X, or we need to improve marketing here. I'm thinking more in terms of those less concrete. You said they need to exhibit leadership. Well, you and I both know that takes real one-on-one coaching to get there, unless, of course, they happen to be someone who came from that GM, a management position, et cetera. Can you just describe what's the first month of onboarding to help that GM just get situated? And then what's the ongoing coaching that they get from you or other regional GMs or whomever? Can you just share with us?
Yeah. So first, to answer your question about structure. So every school has a local general manager that is responsible for the community, mm-hmm. and some schools share. So some GMs are serving 2 or 3 locations, and those are incredible folks that are doing a great job for us.
Right.
Every one of those general managers is backed up by a regional manager. Some of those regional managers are myself. I'm still wearing a regional manager hat and working to pass that off, quickly as we grow.
Right.
But I'm still functionally serving as regional manager for a portion of our schools. Jake, our head of operations, who lives in New York City, is functionally our regional manager for the East Coast. And we're working to dot the map with regional managers in places where it makes sense, and kind of build that. But so every GM has a primary person to whom they report and whose job is to support them in every phase of the journey.
Right.
In terms of what onboarding looks like, we have a short but I think pretty powerful overview of our philosophy that we give to all of our new administrative staff as they come on. And it basically talks about what is Ensemble, why does it exist, right? And we exist to serve our schools that are part of Ensemble. I harp all the time on the fact that we at the Ensemble level teach no music lessons and generate no revenue for the business. We are a cost center. Our only function is to support schools.
Right.
And so to make sure that the GM knows, this is not a corporate pyramid. You're not going up the ladder. We are here to back you up, and your success will be our success. It goes through our beliefs about how to run a successful music community. The core to that belief is that being attractive to students and being attractive to teachers are mutually reinforcing. That the more attractive we make ourselves to students, we get more students, we become more attractive to teachers, we attract and retain great teachers, become more attractive to students. There's this runaway success train of successful music schools where if we get on the path to success, we will have really fun and really great outcomes. And then we talk about back to the KPI question from 45 minutes ago, or maybe an episode ago, depending on how this gets cut up. Sorry to break the fourth wall there, but so we talk about KPIs. How are we gonna talk about success? And I tell them we're gonna view adds and drops, net enrollment growth as being our primary indicator of success. We care, adding 20 and dropping 10 is very different from adding 50 and dropping 40. Those are not the same. Those are not the same outcome. So thinking about churn, thinking about gross additions as being kind of key indicators, and then also thinking about seasonality and inventory. And again, every time we said inventory, I mean lesson inventory, not like retail goods inventory, and availability and all that kind of stuff. And so talking about agreeing up front on how are we going to measure our success, what does this look like, and how are we going to know if we're doing a good job. And the last part is kind of how to talk about Ensemble, because we are very local school forward. So when we acquire a school, we do not change the name. We do not endeavor to change the culture, to homogenize them in any way other than kind of from a systems and software perspective. So we are still, Tampa Music School, and we are still a really fun place to bring your kid in South Tampa. And these folks at Ensemble are not relevant to our parents. And so we don't emphasize anything other than, hey, did you know that we have 25 really awesome teachers right here in South Tampa, and this is what we're doing. And then conversely to our teachers who are aware that they're becoming part of something bigger.
Totally.
Explain that to them, and how to address folks that are going to be naturally excited about that and see that as opportunity, and how to address folks that are going to be naturally suspicious of something that sounds a little corporate and not rock and roll, and how to make sure that they feel comfortable, during the transition. And so that's kind of our first step in onboarding, is like, hey, here's our philosophy and a framework to help you make decisions, within. Here's how we're going to agree to measure our success and to talk about it. And then the next step is like, let's get to know the team. And so one of the regional manager's primary jobs is to marshal resources at the shared services level on behalf of the school. So call the GM, hey, how's it going? What's happening today? What do you need? And, I need this. Okay, let's get that. Let's get recruitment on the phone and make sure that you have a violin teacher because we have a teacher that's leaving. We need help from professional development because we have a teacher that's having an issue with this or that, or just wants more support, or it's not working. There's something going on. We want to run a marketing campaign. We want to spin up a new group class. We want to market a summer camp. We want any of these kinds of things. Sort of like, how do I get support for this on a day-to-day basis? It generally flows through the regional manager to make sure that GM gets what they need to be successful. And I think, bringing the conversation back to the majority of the audience, most owners could sit in the regional manager seat if they wanted to, right? They could say, hey, what's happening at the school today? Okay, we're having a problem with this. Let me put you in touch with our marketing agency, that handles these sorts of things. Let's make sure we get a solution for that. Maybe the owner personally is the HR department and they need to get involved with, recruitment or, kind of performance issue or something like that. So I think the owner of any music school can really easily sit in that regional manager seat if they wanted to, but it requires letting go of that first line responsibility and making it clear that the GM's in charge, if that's the relationship that they want to have, right? It's hard to be accountable to, be visible to all the parents and be accountable to, to everything that happens in the building, and then also be able to step away from it. And so I think a lot of owners could envision themselves in that regional manager seat if they wanted to, and have that type of relationship with a general manager if that was what they were hoping for.
I want to get into compensation, benefits packages. I love your comment around a career path. You're absolutely right, or career progression, rather, was the language you used. Before I do, Daniel had a great question that I feel like now's a great time to ask it. Daniel, if I could ask on your behalf.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Which was, okay, many of our listeners may not be ready to hire a GM, full-time or even 25 hours a week. What can they do right now to begin to prepare for that moment? when, like, in other words, they're listening to you, they're inspired, they're like, man, this role will be great in my school eventually. But in your mind, what do you think needs to happen as an owner right now over the next, let's say they want to hire them by, within 6 to 12 months. What do you think needs to happen for them to begin to get organized enough and prepare for that hire?
It's an interesting question. I would say hiring any kind of front desk staff is a great intermediate step, right? I mean, I think it would be very rare to go directly from I'm an owner operator to I have a general manager. So even if you just have, front desk staff that you bring in on Saturdays, so you can, take the weekend to be home with your family or, whatever. Like, so having some kind of front desk staff is definitely the intermediate step. And what that's going to necessitate is building and documenting processes so that person can do your job while you're not there. Right. And because if you have a front desk staff that's there and they call you 6 times during their shift to ask you how to do stuff, like the system's not working, right? There's too much that's not been defined or that hasn't been kind of appropriately delegated or empowered at the to have them be successful in that role. So, documenting all the stuff that happens on a day-to-day basis. How do I handle a prospect phone call? How do I sign up a new student? How do I deal with an withdrawal request? How do I deal with a customer service complaint? Even if it's, hey, I've heard you. I understand the issue. I'm gonna report that to the owner, and they're gonna get back to you on Monday. If that's the arrangement, right? So I think that's a lot of the steps on the process, and then to me the definition of front desk staff all the way up to general manager is very fluid. I think you can have really high performing front desk staff that they're there, they run the show, you don't think about it. Maybe they've been there for a while. Like functionally, that's a general manager, right? If you ask them to do that on a full-time basis, like that's the job. And you might have full-time staff that are kind of the opposite, right? They're not, they're for whatever reason, whether it's their personality or some gaps in training or kind of culture, they're not able to step into that kind of mindset, and they are kind of really doing just the front desk thing and passing everything off to you. And so it's a fluid thing, and I don't think it's as it needs to be as sudden maybe as the question implies. I think you can have somebody that's there, even if it's a teacher, right? One of your teachers, you hire them to work Saturdays at the front desk, and then you say, hey, this is working really well. Do you want to do Mondays too, so I can take a long weekend? And then all of a sudden they're working 25 hours, and then then they're the general manager, right? Like I think that's actually like a really natural progression for somebody in this role. I like that. And it's a lot lower stakes than what we're doing, which is saying, hey, we have to replace an owner. Can you do this now? And can we bet that you're going to be the right fit? I mean, as an owner, you have the luxury of like tiptoeing into this, and we have to be we got to jump in with both feet because we just bought a business and the owner is looking to do something different.
I love that right there, Jeff, and I'm that mindset piece. It might not even present itself as a mindset piece, but anyone listening to this and their wheels start turning and they hear you say that, they're like, oh, actually, that's a good point. The stakes aren't as high. I can scale this job up with that person. I love that. Nate, you want to talk about budget? Compensation?
I do. I want to. This is. I love numbers, Jeff. So I appreciate you being as transparent as you can around compensation, et cetera. And probably where I kind of want to wrap this a bit. Might have one other closing question. I'm just rereading all my notes here, but let's just talk about compensation range. So you've mentioned a benefits package. Maybe you could be specific around that, like. Is it medical, retirement savings? Is there anything else that I'm not mentioning? And then also I know it's regional because we've already touched on this idea. Like there's cost of living is very different in the BK as it may be elsewhere, right? So fair enough. But can you talk in terms of that compensation package? And can you even, Daniel and I talk a lot in terms of percentages of revenue. Like what percentage do we see going to that line item? Or that it's not a line item at all. It's a highly valuable human, but that percentage there. Would you mind sharing how you guys strategize that?
Sure. So I did not get a list of questions in advance of this call, but I did anticipate that you asked this question, so I thought about how to answer it.
Nice.
And I think the best way that I came up with it is we are paying our general managers So most of them are a full-time salary. We'll talk about that in a second. But if you reduce that to an hourly basis, we're paying most of our general managers in the range of 65 to 80% of what we pay our teachers. So if you think about your teacher's hourly rate, like whatever's market in your area, we're paying our general managers 2/3 to 4/5 of that amount. And so for most of the country, it's $25 or $30 an hour. Is kind of around what that works out to. So in terms of kind of the full package, we're generally paying folks on a full-time salary basis. They're getting paid time off that's intended to kind of coincide with school closures that are part of that. They're getting the profit share, which for most folks works out to about 10 to 15% of their annual comp, so it's meaningful. And we pay it quarterly. So we pay, we basically kind of total up the profit for each quarter. It's often enough that it matters, but it's not monthly where it kind of fluctuates and who knows what's going on. And it provides a nice cadence to sit down and talk about, hey, we just finished a quarter.
Yes.
We just check, and here's how we do it, right? And what's going on. And it helps them understand even like, hey, I didn't really get much profit sharing in Q3. Why is that? Well, it's because the months of July and August were in there. And by the way, we don't actually make much money these time of year. So maybe, you can feel what I feel in terms of how the school's doing, right? And like how happy we are when that back to school season rolls around and we work really hard to get all these students signed up and all that kind of stuff. So salary, profit share, quarterly. What we're doing is we're paying between 3 and 5% of net profit to us directly to the school owner or to the general manager. And it's really easy. It's really easy for us to explain, for them to understand, and for them to believe when we say, hey, you have a vested stake here, and that if you work hard, you'll see the results in your paycheck.
So, can I do a clarifier on that, Jeff, for our listeners? Just because they don't all maybe necessarily have the financial fluency that you do of looking at it this way. So to clarify, you're paying about 65 to, you said, sorry, I lost my note, but you said it's around 65 to 80% of what a teacher would make hourly. And to be clear, that role is a full-time role, so they have more hours there, so they're going to see a higher paycheck generally than that piano teacher who's in there 2 days a week. So that's important for
if you're paying your teacher $30 an hour for easy math, you're paying your GM $20 to $25 an hour, times 40 hours a week times 52 weeks a year equals $40,000 to $50,000 a year base salary. Right,
totally. And whereas that piano teacher might be seeing a third of that because they're working a third of the hours, right?
Yeah.
Or less than a third of the hours. You made a couple of details in there that I think are really important because this is something that BMF has experimented a lot with, and I just want to state it out loud for our listeners. You said there's paid time off. That's usually a very foreign concept for a music school to consider paid time off with their. And I'm not talking about if you have W-2 employees that you need to have paid sick leave. Those things are all mandated for us, right? We're talking about paid time. We're talking about like paid. Go on vacation and get paid, right? But you pointed out that you try to align them with when the school's closed, et cetera, anyways. And that's an important detail. BMF actually hasn't done that. We've allowed our team to take holiday whenever they want, with probably the only exception being my wife, who's the equivalent of our GM, Jessica, who we go on vacation together, and it's usually when we're closed, But at any rate, that's an important little detail there. And
but we give both, right? So we're giving some paid time off around obvious holidays, Memorial Day, Labor Day, 4th of July, Christmas, Thanksgiving. Yeah. And then we're giving a number of days that
they
flexible.
Can take. Okay, got it. Okay, good. That's similar to us. Dig it.
Yeah, and it's intended to be equitable, right? It's sort of like be reasonable with us, we'll be reasonable with you. It's your brother's wedding,
right.
Go, no problem. Like once you have someone on a salary, like, what are you going to do? Not pay them? So like you're doing this anyway, right? So you might as well formally, agree to it and set expectations and get credit for it as the employer for providing this benefit. So.
Yeah. And Jeff, and a really important thing to point out here is for a lot of school owners, the idea of a salaried position is actually foreign, right? When we have, the music school model is oftentimes built on a collection of hourly people, right? And so the notion of like, no, well, now you're full-time salaried at 40 hours a week. The first thing, when that happened at BMF and we started bringing on teachers into full-time salaried positions, one of the first things they asked was like, well, so, when does work start? You're just like, oh, this sort of mindset shift. There's a lot of work there around that to just be like, hey, there isn't like a hard start and a hard end necessarily. And it's always an open conversation because we want to make sure that you're always in a happy place doing what you're doing, right? However, and you pointed this out earlier, which was great that you did, gig season, we're in our songwriting party season, and Will, who's our community manager, and he's full-time, are there full-time. Will's working 7 days this week because we're going to make sure that there's some space on the backside.
So let me just finish the benefits question because we kind of got cut off.
Please do.
So we are. So we talked about salary, we talked about profit share. In terms of benefits, there's a couple things that we're offering. Paid time off is one of them, so we just covered that. We are offering, medical, dental, and vision insurance, so kind of full health benefits. We pay 80% of the employee costs, so they're contributing 20% of that, themselves.
Nice.
We have the advantage of being a larger employer, and so, we get better rates on that. That may be challenging to do if you only have one full-time employee, right? That may not be possible. And so there's other ways of approaching that. There's things called like a individual coverage health reimbursement account, like ICRA, type stuff where you can provide money on a tax-free basis for your employee to go purchase their own care. There's lots of things you can do to, to kind of supplement that if that's not an option. If group benefits are not an option for you, but they are for us. We do offer them. They're very competitive. It's great. It's great coverage, right? I grew up outside of this country. The idea that healthcare is tied to your employment is kind of foreign to me, but it is what we deal with. And so, we're trying to do the best that we can. So health benefits are obviously a big lever for us. I think I mentioned earlier, we also offer that to teachers starting at 30 hours a week. So it's a big incentive for a teacher to add that, that fifth day and teach that, that extra hour with us, is because, they become quite committed to us because we're offering health benefits. And that's another, another big attraction and retention lever for us. That's a differentiator. And then all of our staff, whether you work 1 hour a week or 40 hours a week, but that doesn't matter. You have access to this 401k program that we offer. It's a pretty standard it's called a safe harbor plan. That means that there's an IRS approved contribution formula that means that we're automatically deemed to be compliant. We're not subject to a lot of testing around non-discrimination, that kind of thing. So we offer a 4% employer match into our 401k, and we use a vendor that I actually like to recommend by name. It's called Guideline. I'm not affiliated with them in any way. I don't get any value for saying that, but one of the things I like about it is it's very friendly to folks that are not financially savvy. So you can, if you are not a finance expert, you can get in there, you can set up a 401k, and you can answer questions in plain English about this is how old I am, these are my retirement goals, this is my level of financial fluency, and it will algorithmically generate something that's like a pretty reasonable starting place for you in terms of what you should be invested in. And that's really valuable to our teachers who, again, may not have those skills.
Yes, love it.
We talked about the teacher seminars. One of the more popular ones that we run is about every year I do a personal finance workshop. That is my background. And so nice. I do a personal finance seminar for all of our staff about once a year, just to catch, new crops of people that have come on to Ensemble. But we like Guideline because it's pretty friendly from a setup and onboarding perspective. In terms of like getting your account invested in stuff that makes sense for you without having to know anything about it.
Can I ask one last clarifier, and then I think you did a beautiful job of answering that benefits package. You said 3 to 5% of net profit is what ends up going, you think, on average to the GMs. Is that in their entire benefits package, or were you referencing profit sharing? Sorry,
that's straight profit share. So it's like pull out a P&L. What's the bottom number? Excluding depreciation. what's the number we've agreed to multiply that by? 3, 4, 5 percentage points. That's what you get.
Yep, love it. That was the piece I wasn't clear on. I think that's amazing, Jeff. I love the perspective on GMs that you're bringing, because you're just doing it at a scale that we're not accustomed to. We think we're working on our own we think we're working on an island as a school owner, and our problems are unique to our own program. But you're really sort of enlightening us on this idea that, well, actually we're all facing a lot of the exact same questions, and the KPIs are basically the same across all. They are the same across all 41 of your schools, and so I think our listeners can learn a ton around this notion of how to, and you put it, of who may already be in their organization right now, teed up and ready to take on more autonomy and ownership and accountability.
I just kind of wanted to piggyback off of that and just offer kind of one thing at the end here, which is, our group of general managers is, as I mentioned, very diverse in terms of backgrounds, very diverse in terms of skill sets, and relatively uniformly successful at operating schools that are pretty different from each other in terms of expectations and what the community is looking for and all that kind of stuff. And so I think, if this seems intimidating, know that we've had a lot of success with a lot of different people, plugging them into these roles. And, if we were talking about any one of your listeners' businesses, I guarantee you I could hire a general manager to run it, and that they would do a great job of supporting your students, your parents, your teachers. And, our main mission as Ensemble is to take care of these incredible music communities that have been built and that have been entrusted to us for safekeeping after the owners decided to do something different with their time. And, I know with a lot of data and experience at this point that it can be done. And, you can do it. You as a listener can do it yourself if you want to, take that step back from your business, focus on, some of the higher level, whether you want to be kind of the regional manager equivalent for your business while you're doing other things, whether you just want to have that freedom to step away from the kind of, the entrepreneurial vortex, and be able to turn that off some of the time. It can be done. And I know that, if we were talking about any business in particular, we could find somebody often from inside the community already to run it. And it shouldn't be, I don't want to give the idea that this is a really, such a stark change from operation business as usual. It's not that far away. Look, if you are in the stage of your career where you're thinking about selling eventually, that's a way to make your business much more attractive to a potential acquirer like us. We're going to really love schools that have GMs already in place. And it's a way of, experimenting with that idea too, right? If you're saying, hey, maybe I want to step away from my business, maybe I want to try being kind of semi-retired, hiring somebody to take over both makes that, brings that goal closer, but also allows you to experience that more days than not. And can provide a nice transition point for you on the off ramp of the entrepreneurial journey.